Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and it comes from a question by a listener. The title is, or the question is, does excess protein get stored as body fat? Okay, so kind of a fun question because this isn't something that gets asked often. However, it is often enough that it would be fun for a podcast and for the people who maybe are aware of this question, or when you hear that and go, oh crap, I didn't even think about that. And now we can maybe give you the answer. So again, the idea of this was a listener wrote an email in, and they were curious if eating a high protein, like above normal recommendations, a diet in high protein above normal recommendations, but then eating really low carbs and fats below normal recommendations. So kind of like one of them being above, the other one's being below, like that would quote unquote balance it out. And they were asking if that would allow for the biggest muscles, but still allow for fat loss. And their thought behind this is that protein is used to repair and build muscle. So if they have a lot of it around, they will get a lot of muscle. But then we also know that kind of reducing overall calories and reducing carbs and fats can help aid in fat loss. So if they kept that super low, would they also get fat loss? So could they build all the muscle and lose all the fat? That was their question. And then they had a secondary question of, they wondered if the overeating of the protein would counteract the deficit of the carbs and fats, since protein itself is still calories. So this was kind of a layered question. And we've talked about in the past where we have a previous podcast, number 41, called Diet Right, What Matters Most. And it talks about how overall calories are the most important, then the amount of protein you're eating is the second most important. And this would be for diets to lose weight or even diets to build muscle, but in a lean manner. So try not to become a fat ass with big muscles. You just want to be big muscles and still lean. So calories are the most important whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. Okay, and then protein content is second most important whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. Meal timing, okay, when you're eating your calories, is third most important. Then fourth is kind of the quality of what you're eating. So the quality of what you eat does matter, but it does not matter more than the other things. So we've joked about it before that often people start at number 4, is they'll switch from, say, white bread to wheat bread, or white something to wheat something. And their idea of this, or like going from like regular food to organic food, so their idea of that, making that change, is that it would help them lose weight. And although that is a component of losing weight, it's not the most important, it's not the second most important, or even the third most important. It is the fourth most important. So if they put their effort there, they're not going to get great results. They're going to get some, but not great results. And there might be a better place to put their effort if they're going to take that same level of effort. And it would be in one of the first 3 places rather than the 4th place. Okay, so to unpack some of this, I have actually tried a diet that was higher than the recommended normal amount of protein, but lower than the recommended amount of carbohydrates and fats. And I did this back in 2012, and I did it for 10 months. So whenever I say I try this stuff myself, I'm not joking, and I don't joke around with the time frames. Like, it's plenty enough time to actually know what the hell's happening. So I've done a bunch of diets before, like lose 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less. I've done that 3 times. I've even gained significant amounts of weight and then had to like cut them back off, and had different periods of gaining size too. So I remember one year that's actually involved in this 2012 diet, is in the 10 months of doing the high protein, low carbs and fats, I lost 70 pounds. So I lost a damn good amount of weight, but we're going to talk about the negatives of it. But then after that, I was able to put back on 40 pretty clean pounds. So it was like, I think in a period of like 13 months, I had made a 115 pound change to my body, to where I went down 70, then up 45, and I ended up looking better than I did previously before. So that's a pretty big amount of body weight change in a single year, or like a year plus 1 month. So I've done, like I graduated high school at a skinny fat 165, and I'm now leaner, but I weigh 280 pounds. So I definitely have done my fair share of gaining diets as well as fat loss diets. So, but like I said, I've actually tried this exact diet that the person asked the question about. So I ate 2.5 pounds of chicken a day. Blah. So I had a friend who had a connection with a restaurant, and I would buy chicken in like restaurant batch amounts, and so my whole apartment smelled like chicken. But I was eating 2.5 pounds of chicken a day, and the rest of it was really low in carbs and fats. It was like rice cakes, a little bit of oats here and there. My fats were oils. Every once in a while, I'd have like a special day where I threw in avocado. But you'll be amazed how good avocado can taste whenever the rest of your diet is chicken and rice cakes. So, but I did do it. I tried it, so I've lived it firsthand. So I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit of the science of what's good and bad about it, but then also share my fun little story with it too. Now, I've also done this with clients. So not only my personal experience, but I've had clients who we've either pushed the bounds of this balance of fats, proteins, and carbs, and most often it's because we're getting ready for an aesthetic-based competition. So I've said before, I've helped people get pro cards in aesthetic sports, so I do know what I'm doing at a pretty high level. And then also I've helped a crap ton of people in the middle and true beginners too. So towards the end of their diets, if you're trying to get under 10% body fat, and in certain cases under 8 to 7 to 6, you have to do some pretty extreme things. It is not necessarily healthy, but they're not going for health, they're going for an aesthetic look. So sometimes what do we do with them? I'm going to tell you this, and it doesn't mean it's a recommendation. It's not a healthy thing to do, but just to give you a relation of people using this example. So on those diets, you do have to try to get pretty crazy low in body fat, and that eventually involves reducing carbs and fats below normal recommendations, calories like below their maintenance level, of course, because you have to lose body fat, but you try to keep protein really high. So sometimes those numbers get outside the spectrum of recommendations, but that's because most of our recommendations are to get you to a healthy lean body. Okay, let's say roughly 15% body fat. Let's just say that. That's a pretty healthy amount of body fat, where everybody, if you're walking around on the beach at 15% body fat, you'd be pretty happy. So most people. When you're trying to get on stage, those people, like I said, are trying to get under 10%. They're trying to get to pretty extremes, so therefore it takes extreme measures. So most recommendations are general for a general healthy aesthetic. So why would we do crazy shit? Because they have to get on stage looking like a crazy person. So veins everywhere, no fat or anything. So in those diets, whenever somebody's getting to that stage, and then in the diet that I did, where I was really high protein, low carbs and fats, it worked. Okay, it works to get the body fat off. So like I said, I lost 70 pounds in 10 months. And I've helped people get pro cards to where they lose all the fat they need for that one awesome day, and then all that shit comes right back. So they don't gain all of the fat back, but they do start having to gain fat back in some degree because it's unhealthy to stay that lean all year. So there is a negative sometimes you'll see in aesthetic sport world where it is more so females, but males are absolutely included in this, 100% absolutely included, is they try to stay too lean all year. So they'll over-abuse diuretics, they'll over-abuse fat burners, they'll basically just beat the shit out of their thyroid and metabolism, and then sometimes they have to get onto thyroid medication that they have to stay on for the rest of their life, and then they start to abuse that. So it becomes kind of an addictive aspect for them, is can they stay lean all year? And that is very, very, very difficult to battle against, especially if the person has a history of anorexia or bulimia or eating disorder type behaviors or exercise-related negative outlook. So where they kind of beat themselves up with exercise rather than trying to like starve themselves with food. So I've worked with, I don't know, hundreds of people that have eating disorder backgrounds. And that's something we always have to look for, is to make sure that when we do diets, even not on to get on stage, but just diets in general, that we keep a healthy life perspective to where they still have to be able to go do social events. They still have to go out, hang out with their family. They still have to find a way not to shut out the world as they chase down this goal. So there's a little bit of side information there. But in general, are the primary roles of the foods that we eat, okay, is that protein repairs and builds structures of the body. Carbs and fats are energy. They're like gas in the gas tank of a car. So carbs are kind of energy now. Fats give us kind of sustained energy over the next couple hours. So it's not a big burst of energy, but it gives you an energy that's kind of good enough for the next couple hours. So it kind of depends on what you're doing at that time. So we talked about the concept of meal timing. In podcast 249, we go deeper into meal timing and actually discuss, like, when should you have carbs or when should you have fats. Okay, so we talk about that in podcast 249. Now, those are the primary roles of those nutrients. However, when carbs and fats are too low, okay, they're like, we know that we have to be, if we're trying to lose fat, we know we have to bring our carbs and fats, we have to bring our overall calories below maintenance level. And typically that's not going to involve reduction in protein. That's going to involve a reduction in carbs and fats. Now, there is an appropriate amount below maintenance level that we should be. And oh my gosh, if I had to give you percentages, it's going to be everywhere under the sun because everybody's a little bit different. But let's just say something like 5%. So if you make an enormous reduction, say 20% reduction or 25% reduction, that is too low. That's going to cause stress. So what ends up happening in that case when we reduce our carbs and fats too much is that protein does actually get converted over to becoming an energy source. So our body will break protein down and create like an energy molecule from it. So we're skipping all the sciencey stuff. But our body can use protein for energy whenever carbs and fats are too low. So it doesn't normally do that, but it can and it will do it when needed. Okay, so when it does get energy from protein, it does it in very, very, very minimal amounts. It doesn't like the process of doing that because it's a lot of work for the body. So it'll do it to a very minimal amount, meaning that it'll create enough energy to keep you alive so you won't die. But you're probably going to feel like you wish you were dead. So the quality of life is garbage, absolutely garbage. When your fats and carbs are too low and you're surviving off of protein breakdown, you're going to feel like crap, okay? So you're going to have brain fog, you're going to be moody as hell, you're going to feel bloated actually, like have like really high degree of water retention, but you're also going to feel flat and mushy in your muscles, so it's not a very good aesthetic look and you'll kind of freak out a little bit on the way you look. You'll have absolutely no energy, none. Like you'll have to be using caffeine to get through anything. And the body will send signals continuously over and over and over again to do the minimal amount of anything you do all damn day. So you will have no energy for anything. Your body won't feel like doing anything. You're just going to be very lethargic and just want to take a nap all the time. So that's what ends up happening to the body is you can stay alive, but it's not going to be a very good quality of life, and you're not going to have any energy to do anything, let alone like training and stuff. You won't have energy to want to do normal daily life. So if you're ever doing a diet and you feel like, oh man, he just listed everything I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing brain fog, moodiness, like mood swings. I feel bloated, but I also feel flat and pudgy. I have no energy for anything at all. I'm trying to use caffeine, but caffeine isn't even working. Then you're probably under eating your carbs and fats significantly enough that that's why you're feeling like crap, okay? So you might need to bring your carbs and fats up some. Let's just say you bring them up 2.5 to 5%. And like in your overall calories. So this is all, like, I'm trying to give you numbers to give you an idea of what the appropriate jumps are, but I don't want you getting lost in the numbers, okay? So if I was eating, say, 1,800 calories, and I wanted to bump up my calories to feel a little bit of extra energy, but I don't want to run the risk of not losing the body fat that I want. So 1,800 calories, 10% of that is 180. So if you were to go from 1,800 and just add, say, 90 calories, that's borderline enough to even feel it. But it's absolutely safe enough to try and not worry about losing the body fat loss progress. So maybe you feel a little bit better, but you're still losing body fat. That's what we want, right? So maybe only a 5% increase sounds insanely small, but it's within the window of it might make enough of a difference to maybe feel, but it isn't so significant that I'm going to shut off my fat loss process. Okay? So I know that number sounds really small, but it kind of fits the bill of safe to try. Whereas if I told you to go up 15 or 20%, you might completely shut off the fat loss process. So yeah, you're going to feel better, but you're no longer losing fat, which is your ultimate goal. Okay? So, if you're feeling all those things and you're not sure if you're under eating, bump up your carbs and fats by a little bit, okay, like that 5-ish% of total calories, and see if that helps you feel better. If it does, then you were probably overextended and you were too low in your carbs and fats. Okay? Now, when you undereat carbs and fats, even if you have a high amount of protein, but the overall calories are still too low, okay? The extra protein doesn't get stored as fat because you don't have extra overall calories. So, what ends up happening is you don't, in a sense, you don't actually have excess protein in regards of excess overall calories. So you're eating more protein than you need, but your overall calories are still lower than your maintenance, then no, you don't have to worry about any extra calories, whether they're protein or not, getting stored as body fat because you don't have excess calories. Okay? So we don't have to worry about getting protein being stored as fat. But you also will not maximally build muscle. Okay? So the protein is being broken down for energy. So that becomes a higher priority than the protein being used for muscle growth. So you might build some muscle, but you won't maximally build muscle because a lot of the protein is getting picked off for energy. So does eating a high protein but low carbohydrate and low fat diet help you build muscle maximally? No. Of course, if your calories are below maintenance level. So if you're above maintenance level, there's pros and cons. We're going to talk about that in a second. But in general, if you're wanting to lose fat, so the person who sent me the question, they want to lose fat first, but they also want to build muscle and stay strong. But they don't want muscle and strength at the cost of not being able to lose fat. So ultimately, losing fat is their main goal. So that would require them to be at a caloric deficit. So that's why I'm answering it based on caloric deficit mostly, is because that's what the person was asking about. So in their question was essentially you could say, if I'm in a caloric deficit for fat loss, but I eat above the recommended amount of protein, does that extra protein get stored as body fat? The answer is no, because your overall calories are still below maintenance level. Okay. Hopefully that helps some. Okay. So the next thing we have here is since the body is underfueled, okay, meaning you don't have enough carbs and fats and your overall calories are kind of low, your activity level physically and metabolically, like at the speed of your body breaking down and doing things, is all going to be reduced. And the stimulus for fat loss gets reduced. So you feel like crap and you won't lose all the body fat because you're just kind of feel like you have no energy for anything. Your quality of training will go to crap. So all of the stimulus that causes our body to need to burn off body fat will all be reduced. Your general activity will be reduced. Your metabolism will be reduced. So even though you're eating in a caloric deficit, the ability to, like the purpose or the reasoning for burning body fat gets reduced because you're no longer as active as you should be. Okay? Or as you'd like to be. So that's something I definitely saw when I did that diet for 10 months, is I also took on a challenge to do cardio at 6 a.m. every day, where I did at least 20 minutes of interval cardio every single day for 10 months. And some days I wasn't able to do it at 6 a.m., so I had to do it either earlier in the day or later in the day, but I did do it every single day for 10 months. And it became harder and harder and harder and harder throughout the entire diet to stay motivated to do that. So it was very, very tough to do. I went through my stages of trying to use caffeine, then the caffeine didn't even work, and then you have notes on your phone that says get up out of bed, you fat ass. And that motivation worked for like 3 or 4 days, but then you need another motivation. But it became very hard to stay active, and to the point where any chance I had throughout the day, I was sitting down, I was getting off my feet, I was trying to reduce my activity because I felt so tired. So that's going to reduce my stimulus for fat loss. So you might be reducing your calories to promote fat loss, but then you're reducing your caloric usage, which counteracts that benefit. So when you undereat your carbs and fats too much, your ability to lose fat will actually be reduced because of this reduction in activity level of your physical self, but then also internally your metabolism kind of slows down and the body stops trying to do as much stuff. Okay? So does eating tons of protein but really low carbs and fats work for fat loss? Yes, it kind of does at first because your overall calories will be lower, and we know that that's the most important thing, and that will relate to fat loss. However, you will feel like crap. You'll have the brain fog, the moodiness, the bloatedness, but also feeling flat and fluffy. You'll have no energy. You'll have no desire to do anything. So it does work, but it doesn't allow you to live a life that you'd actually enjoy. Okay? So the other downside is eventually, if the only thing you're doing is reducing calories, which is causing a reduction of activity level, the only way to go from there is to reduce even more calories. Eventually, that'll plateau, and you won't have any more changes to make on your diet. So you'll reduce calories, get some effect. Then your body will normalize to that calorie amount. You'll reduce more calories, get some effect. Your body will then reduce fat and normalize to that amount. But eventually, there will be nowhere to go. You can't keep continually reducing calories. So how you fight this typically is we try to do more activity, and specifically muscle damage-based activity. So you can use muscle damage for fat loss, and you actually should and you must in order to get the best results. So that's something we've talked about in a past podcast, and that was podcast number 181. Okay, so how to use muscle damage, not how to, but also why you use muscle damage for fat loss. So when people are trying to continually reduce calories and nothing seems to be working right, you're like, I am eating as clean as I possibly can. I'm eating so little that I can't even imagine eating less. Well, then you have to increase your muscle damage activity. So I see this all the time with females, more so than males, but females will do like group classes or exercise concepts that don't involve muscle damage, and then they plateau at caloric reductions, and then they feel kind of stuck. So when they're in that stage that they can't reduce their calories anymore, they need to increase their activity level of stuff that causes muscle damage. That will allow them to continue to lose body fat. Okay? So if you're a male or female and you feel like you're eating as clean and restrictive as you possibly can, then your only room to go from there is to increase muscle damage activity. Okay? So that's your answer. Now, does eating excess protein but low carbs and fats work for muscle gain? Now, this is assuming you're now eating at a caloric positive. Okay, you're eating excess calories above your maintenance level. Not really. It won't really work, because even though you have extra calories coming from like an insane amount of protein, but if your carbs and fats are too low, which is the idea of this question, is your ability to do awesome intense workouts will absolutely suffer. So you'll have no sustainable energy throughout the workout. Your performance is going to go to crap. You're often going to feel dehydrated as well because you won't have as many carbohydrates in your body system holding water for you. So overall, that experience is going to be awful. So the quality of your workouts will be awful. The quality of your mood is awful. So it relates to a lessened process of trying to build muscle tissue. So both scenarios, okay, of low overall calories, and reduction of fats and carbs, but really high protein for fat loss. That scenario, okay, it'll get you short-term results but long-term failure. If you eat excess overall calories and excess protein, but you under-eat carbs and fats in hopes of maximally building muscle, again, that'll get short-term results but long-term failure. So neither one of those scenarios is long-term successful. So just like every other freaking diet on the planet that's wrong, they work right away. So ketogenic diets work right away. Intermittent fasting diets work right away. Any stupid diet you see on the internet or on infomercials works right away because it involves typically a caloric reduction, okay, of some sort. But it's not a sustainable amount, and you're going to often feel like crap. You're going to be restricted in your food choices, and then everything kind of unravels from there. So these two scenarios fit the same bill, whatever. Is short-term results, sure, but you end up feeling like crap and everything plateaus eventually. So the best answer is to eat the calories that you need, okay? So if you're trying to gain weight, just eat 5 to 10% above maintenance level. As your body adjusts, adjust that number. If you're trying to lose weight, okay, lose body fat, eat 5 to 10% below your maintenance level. As your body adjusts, adjust that number. Make sure your protein is adequate, and we talk about how much protein you should have in podcast 33, okay? And that tells you how much protein you should have in your diet. And then just be active. Try to do activities that involve muscle damage. The more muscle damage you create, the higher amount of calories you burn at rest, okay? and therefore you don't have to reduce the calories you eat. So you're able to eat more and lose fat when you involve muscle damage activities. Cool. Okay. So hopefully this helped answer the question. It might got a little kind of nitty gritty there on the details, but hopefully it was helpful. Okay. So anytime anybody has a question, this is awesome and super fun to be able to answer direct questions to listeners in the podcast. So this podcast was created just to help people out with anything that might be holding them back from a healthy life. So the more questions you guys ask, that just furthers the point of what this whole podcast was created for. Okay. So thank you for those who send in questions and listen on a regular basis. I really sincerely appreciate it. So it's fun to get the support. So if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. So I've seen people doing that recently, and that's freaking awesome. I love that, because the more people we help, the happier this world will be. Okay? So if you have the chance to share some happiness into someone's life with some extra good information, please, please, please do it. Okay? And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. So just like this person sent in a question, make sure you send in any questions you have if there's something you would like clarity on. Okay? And you can tell us at our email at brutaliron@gmail.com. Cool. As always, I hope this was helpful. And thank you for listening.